I've just been thinking a lot about like inclusion and accessibility in the making of the art, like not as an afterthought, but as something that is thought of in the beginning and becomes part of the art and becomes part of the experience.
Your most recent installation, Fibers of Being, explores vulnerability and mortality through understanding genetic inheritance, while also examining the body as this mortal vessel. So what was the motivation behind these subjects?
I think at a very young age, I recognized that, there are these genetic factors that also could get passed down that weren't the easiest to deal with. And my dad had psoriatic arthritis and psoriasis, and I watched him struggle for a really long time. And I think there was just this part of me that knew that I would get it. Mm-hmm. And at 15, I did. I was diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis. In my head, I thought, well, how cool is this? Like, I have such a good relationship with my dad, mm-hmm. and he has this. We're going to be able to talk about it and work through it. But it didn't really go that way, just because I wasn't necessarily seeing it from his perspective, which is like, he was diagnosed with the same thing as me when he was 15, and he lived his whole life just hoping that no one would experience what he experienced. And so that's just like a constant reminder of this, the not so good stuff that comes with genetics. Like this thing in between us, like this installation became this like very real body. There became this like other medium or this other like container for these things that we were working through. And the whole piece is based off of this like phone call that the two of us have about all of this.
It's your daughter, and you passed it along to her. You have a tremendous amount of guilt. And I was, riddled with guilt and anger over it.
So would you say that Fibers of Being is kind of reflecting on this collective perspective that you and your father didn't have before?
Yeah, I think like part of it is about my experience, part of it is about his experience, part of it is about our collective experience. And then the reason for making work about my illness is because I feel like with invisible illness, like you're constantly having to like either just decide that no one's gonna know, or you have to just start telling people and they don't get it because you look fine.
I feel like a lot of people want to just identify things as like black and white, and there is such power in being in the gray area.
I always used to speak about like my own illness as like being in the gray, but for so long it was like all I wanted was like just at least some sort of definitive understanding of what was going on. And when you have an autoimmune disease, there's no knowing, but in that space it's fruitful.
Can you walk us through the installation and kind of what it looked like in the space?
Yeah, so you walked into this room and there's a projector, a 16 millimeter projector projecting on the side of this structure. It's a film of giving myself an injection, and then I treated that film with the medication that I was injecting myself with in the film. So the film kind of deteriorates and does all this weird stuff. I treated the 16 millimeter film, so it's like thinking about the body of film and my body in parallel. And then you also, like in the room, you hear this conversation that I'm having with my dad over the phone. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like the centerpiece. Mm-hmm. And then as you move closer, the film is being projected onto the side of a structure that you can walk inside of, and that's filled with mushrooms. So it's kind of like the womb of the exhibition. As you move closer to it, it loses specificity in my story and becomes more about just like the experience of being in a body. I bought a stethoscope and I like rigged a microphone through it and then recorded the sounds of the inside of my body, and that's kind of what you're hearing inside of the space. You can walk to the other side of the structure, so you can like you kind of like walk at it. There's a screen, and then you can like go inside of it and back around to the other side. And on the other side, there's another film that's being projected in 16 millimeter, and that's of my dad's skin. It's kind of this piece where you're not exactly sure if you're looking at massive landscape, or if you're looking at like individual hairs on someone's body and it's playing with scale and this idea of like what is a body, and
it kind of alternates with the landscape of the mushroom's composition, right?
Yeah. Texture became super important to me in the audio and in everything. I mean, it became really important for it to also be this experience that's multisensory, you know, like that if you're blind, or, you know, but you can touch and you can smell, and I tried to involve as many of the senses as I possibly could. So I really thought about like, you know, what are the ways in which I can make the senses really come alive? This piece becomes something that everyone can take at least a little bit something from it. The room is still, I mean,
I was gonna ask.
It's still kicking. I saw it about a week ago. Some of the, you know, the mushrooms themselves have hardened and have just like kind of remained in this like static space. Some of them have fallen onto the ground, and now it's just kind of doing what I always hoped it would do, and that's just, it's existing and it's living out its like life cycle kind of.
No, and it felt right in line with, you know, these themes of mortality and really just letting things exist as broad living organisms. Did you always plan to use 16mm film?
Yeah, I think the 16mm film was like the thing that I was most confident about. I mean, I had always pretty much used a digital medium and never really felt, I don't know what it was, but it just, maybe my work was like, felt more like me, was when I was just like letting go, like leaving everything up to chance.
I feel like 16mm film is a medium that allows for happy accidents, you know? Are you familiar with Stan Brakhage?
Yeah.
That's like what I thought of when I saw the silent film of you injecting yourself.
It's like the biggest compliment ever, because, you know.
Absolutely. It's like playing with like experimental film and doing something that is not conventional and really becoming part with the medium.
I'm like making this weird art about my inability to really understand what's going on in my own body, and I don't really want to make art about anything else, because art has really become just like this like vessel for me to understand myself.
Yeah, and I think that Fibers of Being really encourages people to break away from suffering in silence and just like kind of opening up this channel where even if there are no answers or solutions, there's at least a system of support and an opportunity for empathy to develop, and, you know, self-awareness and difficult conversations, you know.
People were like, you know, do you hope that people will have like empathy around disability or around chronic illness? And like, yes, I always hope that. But I don't want to decide what people are going to take away from the conversation. But I did want people to feel more, like you said, self-awareness, or just awareness of their own body and of their own experience. And if everyone left just thinking about their own body, like just a tiny bit more, I would be thrilled.
So much of Fibers of Being is about confronting one's body when it no longer works the way it should, and it propagates this idea as the body as this vessel. Did you intend for your installation to be focused on the tangible versus the emotional underbelly of having a disability?
I was very set on leaving things as open as I possibly could, while still sharing a lot of the specificity of my own experience. Visible illness in so many ways is something that we all deal with. It just became really important to me to find a way to bring that into the physical and kind of create this like extension of my own body that could exist in physical space that had these like visible characteristics of pain.
So what kinds of conversations are you hoping to start or facilitate through Fibers of Being?
I just want people to be thinking about their bodies, to be thinking about the bodies that carry them through their day-to-day, to be thinking about, you know, the threads and the things that connect us all as humans, and kind of to think about our own experience and think about the experience of others and try to kind of meet somewhere. The connection of this piece and to like the alien landscape, I mean, that was something that I thought a lot about, this like otherworldly space, our bodies becoming alien to us, and like what happens when we become so detached from the experience of being in a body that like not like the body almost becomes unrecognizable.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's this like this searching and rediscovering of what the body actually is, like that piece of my dad's skin, like almost thinking about it as if you're looking at the moon or at this other planet, and then you realize, oh wait, that's me.